Welcome to Straight Talk Wealth with your experts on all aspects of wealth accumulation, preservation, and income planning guaranteed to last a lifetime. And now, from the American Legacy Solutions Studios in Ventura, California, the host of Straight Talk Wealth, Bruce Whitey.
Hi friends, Bruce Whitey here, host of Straight Talk Wealth Radio. Hey, thanks for joining us in our new American Legacy Solutions Studios in Ventura, California. We are going to build a great reference library for you, where we've got so many topics we want to cover with you. I've got a special one today. Firstly, I want to let you know where to find us. You can find us on Facebook, our fan page, Straight Talk Wealth Radio. Look us up on Facebook and like us there. Go to YouTube, find our YouTube channel, Straight Talk Wealth Radio. Just look up Straight Talk Wealth Radio, you'll get there. And go to our website where we'll also keep an archive and an active blog where I can do videos and actually write a little bit and give you references, download things. That's going to be at straighttalkwealth.com, straighttalkwealth.com website. And we'll be adding more and more channels for you to get the information that we're putting out. Today, I have a really special lesson I want to go over with you, a little bit of a tutorial. It's called Rates of Return. And what this is going to be about today is how quickly you can spend down a portfolio. Now, I think people don't really get this math until it's too late. When you're building your retirement nest egg, when you're building, the rules of investment planning are not the same as the rules of retirement planning. Investment strategies are not retirement strategies. Investment risks are not retirement risks. They're different. And the math when you're building is pretty simple. I throw in plus 50,000. That's your savings for the year. And I made 7%. And the next year, I threw in another 50,000, but I was down 4%. And I threw another 50,000 in, and now I'm up 3%. And it's just addition and percentages. That's all it is. It's really simple math. And any strategy that helps you put more away or increase those numbers is great. But it's different when you retire. There's a new math that comes into it, and that is you're now subtracting from a portfolio. Your job in retirement is to take what you've built and get rid of it and spend it. But you've got to spend it at a trajectory, at a length of time of which we don't know. You've got to know what it's going to build at in order to do that. It's not a free ride anymore. You've got to look at these things and project 30 years out what all of those calculations mean. So the game really changes when you get close to and into retirement. And I want to help you think with that today. And what we're going to cover here is rates of withdrawal. So again, rates of withdrawal are how fast you're going to take everything out of that portfolio and spend it down if you can. I have to say real quickly, it's funny because when I've done this in seminars and I ask people, how much money do you want in your portfolio the day that you die? Maybe they're thinking about the kids and they might have just a straight number of, well, I want to leave the kids 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 each, whatever it is they want to leave the kids. But if I ask them, if you don't have a big enough portfolio for that, are you willing to live like a pauper in your retirement years for the kids? And they're like, no. So maybe they think of a number that they think they'll be safe, it'll last them. If they make sure there's $500,000 left, then their spending plan would be safe. But the fact is, what if you could spend all of the money and then pass away? Not worried about the kids, of course. And the consensus, typically the room turns into one where people start saying, you know, I want to leave $10 in that account the day that I die. That is an ideal scene for a lot of people if they're going to live the best lifestyle they can in retirement. So again, we're going to address that too. But first, I want to just talk about the three greatest risks in retirement planning as opposed to investment planning. The first risk is longevity risk, and that's just we don't know how long you're going to live. We don't know how long this plan's got to go for. And the thing about longevity risk is there are several other risks, and over the coming weeks, we'll be doing more videos telling you about each of them. But longevity risk is the multiplier. If you're worried that the market might fall off at some point, the longer you live, the more likely it is that the market's going to fall off at some point if you're around longer. If you're worried that you're going to have inflation in your life and you're trying to spend and you don't know what inflation is going to be like, well, the longer you live, the greater chance there's going to be an inflationary event in the United States or wherever you live. So longevity is not only just how long you're going to live and how to plan for it, it's all the other things that could come in. And the greater the likelihood is that the longer you live, other incidents, other risks will come into play. Sequence risk, I don't want to get into a lot of it right now, but the bottom line on sequence risk is that it matters whether the market, when you're spending down a portfolio, let's say the market was just going to do this all the time. It's just going to go up and down. But whether that cycle starts high and goes low at the beginning of your retirement, or whether you start low and go high at the beginning of your retirement, where you start is a really key moment that can determine the length of a portfolio. So we'll get more into sequence, but it's the sequence of returns risk that can also make or break a portfolio. But today we're going to talk about withdrawal rate risk. That's the one I want to cover with you. So withdrawal rate risk is basically the risk that may threaten a successful retirement income strategy if not planned for appropriately, and it is called withdrawal rate risk, or the risk of withdrawing too much too early. Now that is one risk of this, withdrawing too much too early, but as I just mentioned earlier, it is also the risk of not maximizing your retirement lifestyle to the fullest because you were so worried that your withdrawal rate risk was too conservative. The risk goes both ways, that you had to live like a pauper to save money for the kids, or you spent too much and you ran out of money. So both of those aspects go into this because, as I say, this says not maximize your retirement lifestyle because they are too hesitant to withdraw from their portfolio. So a great chart here was done by Jenwer some years ago, but I love this chart and it's still applicable and it's just very visual, so I like using it. This is a chart that shows 50% stocks and 50% bonds throughout 1972 to 1996. Now, bonds delivering much higher rates, much higher interest rates than they are today. But it's still telling nonetheless if we just take this chart. So this says, for example, a portfolio that started with $500,000 and took 5% per year out of that portfolio, 5% withdrawal rate, 50% stocks, 50% bonds, that would have lasted till 1994. That is 22 years of longevity in that portfolio before it's gone and it's done. Now, change that 1 percentage point. Go to a 6% withdrawal rate, and you've lost 7 years off that portfolio. That portfolio would have drained down by 1987, 7 years shorter. So this is crucial. I want you to understand when you're trying to plan for 20, 30, maybe 40 years of retirement, one incremental mistake in this can make a big difference. So small mistakes in your math when you're doing planning for how much you're going to withdraw can actually have huge impacts. And the reason they're huge impacts is they don't show up for at least a decade later. If you made a mistake in what withdrawal rate you took, you're not going to see it for a while to come, at least a decade or more. And by then it's too late. You've hit a trajectory that you're going to have to make major changes in your life to get out of the wrong trajectory. All right, so let's talk about the 4% rule. That has been for some decades the sort of time-tested rule of how much money you should be taking out of your portfolio. And again, it's a key concept, tends to be a rule that is based on a 30-year trajectory. That's what they've been basing it on for some time. And it is a matter of trajectory. That's what this is all about. So and by the way, you might be asking yourself, I've saved my money. I'm going to take out what I need to. And this is really honestly an attitude so many people have when I bring this up. It's too much math. And for them at the end of the day, they just figure, what difference does it make? I'm being prudent, and they don't like doing this math. But I would insist it's a very important piece of math. So let's talk about how you solve 30 years in advance. What's involved in solving today a trajectory for 30 years? So if you don't calculate correctly, and by the way, let's just talk about what difference it makes first. Then I'll tell you about some knowns and unknowns. But the difference it makes is that you could have to cut your spending in old age. That's a bad time to figure out how to cut back your spending by 30% because you made some mistakes a while ago. You don't want to be in your 80s and figuring that out with probably increasing medical bills. And that doesn't even include the fact that Social Security is telling us that about the year I hit 80 in 2037, they are going to cut benefits by 25%, according to the current trustees report. So right away, that income source is going to have to cut, let alone having a wrong trajectory out of what you're taking out of your savings. You could be devastated by inflation. This is another reason it's so important to not get that wrong. What happened if you calculate incorrectly is inflation can convince you that you needed to rethink this 20 years ago. You can be devastated from a single emergency. So this is another thing that just could come up where if you have that trajectory just at a level where it's, on a razor's edge, and you have a single emergency, a medical concern, a long-term care expense, a house here in Ventura County that didn't have good fire insurance, those things could also then completely change the lifestyle you've got to live from then on because your trajectory wasn't robust enough to be able to calculate for those single emergencies. So what that can begin to cause is a dwindling spiral. You start spending more principal out of your money, and as you spend your principal down, you've got less and less principal. Next year, you have less principal earning interest, so you've got even less interest than the year before, which means you got to take more principal out. And in the long run, you hit a dwindling spiral and you run out of money. So that's what could happen if you don't calculate correctly. Now, the way to go into doing this type of planning is you have to look at knowns and unknowns. The first thing you can get known, and you should make known, and most people don't, just because they have not been dealing with just confronting reality, is what's your budget? What is your cost of living going to be? So you need to know when you're doing retirement planning what that's going to be. You need to think of these contingencies. So work that out and include your Medicare costs, your insurance costs, and everything else that's going to be on the table that you need to take care of. If you're still paying off a mortgage or not, all of those are cost of living. Work them out because that's where you start when you do your planning. Then add some inflation to that. What's the soup? 3% inflation, 2%, 4%. What do you think it's going to be? You got to add that into your cost of living. And then this becomes then a formula of speed of spending versus speed of earning, because the other factor then comes into how much have you got an expectation that you're going to earn in that portfolio. So that becomes challenging because in today's markets, if you're going to earn anything, you're going to have to be at risk. And now the risk becomes its own monkey on your back of, well, we had some great 10% years for a long time. Who knew we were going to have another 40% year down? So these are sort of like you're starting with your knowns and you're working into your unknowns is what I'm really trying to say on this slide. So let's look at the historical assumed safe withdrawal rates. Historically, what have good investigators told us we can do and safely make it through retirement when it comes to this withdrawal rate puzzle? In 1994, the 4% rule was created by a financial advisor named William Bengen. Now, the idea was that beginning in the first year of retirement, you could withdraw 4% of the portfolio's balance. So if you save $1 million, then the theory was you could withdraw $40,000 to supplement your retirement lifestyle in the first year of retirement. You could adjust that for inflation each year thereafter, and you'd have a reasonable expectation that you can make it through retirement without exhausting your savings and investments. Now, mind you, 1994 had higher interest rates, higher bond rates to take a balanced portfolio with. So today, even Bill Bengen himself, who nearly 20 years ago released this groundbreaking research demonstrating that 4% is a sustainable withdrawal rate in retirement, Bill Bengen said he's not convinced that the rule still applies given the current economic environment. And that was expressed in a CNBC article. Jennifer Woods wrote it, I believe, and it was called Rethinking the 4% Withdrawal Rule, where William Bengen said, I'm not so convinced anymore. Rethinking the 4% Withdrawal Rule was the article. So, moving forward, January 2013, Morningstar Research, they suggested less than 4%. They said, quote, the upshot, according to Morningstar, is that in today's markets, retirees who want this is important, 90% probability of achieving a retirement income goal with a 30-year time horizon and a 40% equity portfolio, and it's important, you can't be in 100% equities, it's 100% risk. So if you're hedging about 40% equities, they're saying, you better make that withdrawal rate about 2.8%. So that's where Morningstar came in January of 2013. Shortly after that, March of 2013, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article called Say Goodbye to the 4% Rule. They published an article by an author. And they suggested that the safe withdrawal rate was 2%. Quote, if you had retired January 1st, 2000 with an initial 4% withdrawal rate and a portfolio of 55% stocks and 45% bonds, and you rebalance that each month to keep that ratio in place, with the first year's withdrawal amount increased by 3% a year for inflation, your portfolio would have fallen by a third by 2010, according to investment firm T. Rowe Price. And you would be left with only a 29% chance of making it through 3 decades, the firm estimated. So let's go back through that. They're saying if you applied the 4% rule from January 1st, 2000, and you did everything according to that, and you had 45% bonds, 55% stocks, you would have been so depleted by 2010 that you only had a 29% chance of making it through a 30-year retirement. Within the same article, they reference a study that was titled The 4% Rule is Not Safe in a Low-Yield World. That was written by Wade Pfau, P-F-A-U, of the American College. This guy's done a lot of study on this topic. I definitely recommend that you look him up. He's got great recommendations, great research on it, of the American College, Wade Pfau. He suggests that up to 50% of people would exhaust their savings if they followed the 4% rule today. So if you do the 4% rule today, you're going to exhaust your savings. You got a 57% chance that you won't make it through a 30-year retirement. More recently, a study suggested that financial professionals should be planning for a 40-year retirement for their 40-year retirement, not just 30. Now they're saying you should plan for a 40-year retirement if you're a responsible professional, and because of increasing longevity. The article suggested that the safe withdrawal rate for the first year of retirement should be 1.49%. If a portfolio had 40% stocks, and it still had, at that point with 1.49, it still had a 10% chance of failure. It also states that very few retirees would accept a 10% chance of exhausting their savings. Talk more about that in a minute. Keep in mind that these are studies that are done by third parties. But I want you to think about that for a second. If you had $1 million in 1994 using the withdrawal rate back then, you could pull $40,000 a year out in 1994, and you are okay for a 30-year retirement. $40,000 with inflation. Now they're saying you should never take more than $15,000 to $20,000 off the top of a $1 million portfolio. That's a big swing, and for most retirees, it is in the wrong direction. And think about this for a second. If you even had a 10% chance that you might not make it through your full retirement, would you get on an airplane if you were greeted by a stewardess who greeted you at the door and said, let me take your coat, and I want to let you know we're informing all the passengers today that the plane does have a 10% chance it will not make it to its destination. And you know what will happen if that occurs. Would you like to come on board? Would you take that flight? Because that's the chance you're taking if you miscalculate this. All right, so I want to give you a tool to help you actually do some thumbnails on this and work with it a little bit. This is my own retirement withdrawal calculator that I built just for staging this in my office with clients just to get a thumbnail. This is not a complete study. It's just a quick and easy, down and dirty way to look at numbers on this. So I'm going to start with, and by the way, I'll just tell you real quick, you're going to get this. There should be a form where you're watching this to order this, and we will send it out to you. You can have it on your own. It's on Google Sheets. Easy to use it at home. If you don't see it where you are right now, go to straighttalkwealth.com. You can email me there, Bruce at straighttalkwealth.com, requested it, or there should be a prominent place on our website where you can also order it there. There's a couple tabs I want to familiarize you with. This is the For Edit tab. This is where you're going to put your numbers in. This is Don't Edit. This just is a kind of color-coded, easy way to see what your numbers run through in the future. It's also got a chart. All of these pages have a chart, but there is a separate tab where if you want to blow the chart up, see it a little bit bigger, you can see here what's happening on the chart. So I'm going to go back to the Edit section, and I'm just going to take a $400,000 portfolio. I'm going to apply 3% inflation to my withdrawals, and I'm going to start at a 4% withdrawal rate. I'm still sticking with William Bengen on it. And a growth rate of the portfolio at 4%. So understand, I'm taking 4% out, but it's growing at 4%. That should give me a sustainable portfolio. But what do I see here? And you can adjust the age to 65. Well, I took 16,000 out, but that's at the start of the year. By the end of the year, I grew back what was left. So I'm only down, $640 in the portfolio. But that was because I took 16 out at the beginning, and it took the rest of the year to make the other 4% back. So it's not coming quite back to battery. And very slowly over time, you get into what I mentioned earlier, which is principal spend down. You can see it in this chart. Now, if I blow this up a little bit, you'll see that, hey, big deal, my money didn't run out till I was about 93 years old. I think that's a great plan. Well, do you want to be 90 years old and see that you only have this much money left? Opening your statements will almost guarantee that you won't make it to 95 because you'll see a shocker as you watch your portfolio drift downward. That's principal spend down, and it is a very slippery slope. So, you can play with this. We go back to the edit page. You could say, well, okay, if that's what's going to happen, what happens if maybe I'll take a 3% withdrawal rate? Good, much better curve here. And when we work with our clients, it's all about the curve. That's what we're trying to change. When I see these downward curves, you can actually, if you properly plan, and if you have the resources to supply basically what you need, and we stretch those resources to the limit, and we do it safely without risk, then we try to get an upward curve on the actual momentum. It's all about momentum. I'd rather start with a smaller amount and an upward curve than a large amount that's being depleted. So you can learn more about that on a free retirement roadmap, which I'll show you about in a minute. But the bottom line here is, if you want to look at this chart, but just realize if you've got $400,000 and you're taking a 3% withdrawal rate, you better get used to the fact that you only have $12,000 a year to pull out of your portfolio. That's it. Numbers are all relative. If you have a $600,000 portfolio, then you can take $18,000 a year out with inflation. You can change the inflation rate, you can change the withdrawal rate, you can change the growth rate. But you'll get to see the momentum. And that's what I want you to understand in terms of how do you project? How do you know? Now, listen, very unreal. You're going to get any kind of growth rate that's year after year after year giving you just such a beautiful average. That's not going to happen. So a whole unknown gets into this in terms of the ebb and flow of a portfolio. But this is a good starting point. So let's go back to our presentation here. All right, so if you want to do something more in detail, this is available to you also on the website. Just go to straighttalkwealth.com/retirement roadmap, or just go to straighttalkwealth.com and look for the button or the symbol retirement roadmap, and it'll get you here and you can request one of these. Again, this is no charge, no obligation. So when you want to get more intricate on this, you go a level deeper and you actually do a retirement roadmap. So this just gets into, for example, this is someone who right here needs $35,000 a year on average to live on. Great, they've got their expenses down, barely above their Social Security income. So that could be very robust. Your income, your need is your need, your portfolio is your portfolio, but these can be all put in here with details. This is a $35,000 a year income need. We put a 3% inflation rate in it. That's why the bars are increasing each year. They're showing the income need growing with inflation. This is Social Security in the blue coming in. It's not growing as fast as the inflation rate. The white is an annuity that they're taking some income from. So it piles up and it adds to their need for income. The green is the growth of their income, of their investments, adding to their income every year. And when they don't get enough growth, then they start taking from principal, which is the gray. And you can see the momentum of the portfolio over here. Again, we try to change that momentum the best we can and in a safe way. But this is the way you do it more in detail. And you'll see in this that there's places to actually put all of the different investment amounts in here and to break it down much more thoroughly. These are cash infusions. And here you see they've got an annuity payment, $9,000 a year coming in. It's flat. It's going to be for life. It doesn't grow. And all of these things add in. That's a retirement roadmap. And if you want to see for yourself a retirement roadmap, go to straighttalkwealth.com and go to the retirement roadmap button right there and scroll on down. You can learn more about it. You can watch a video on it, understand what it is. And if you're interested, let us know on the form here, and we will be happy to arrange that for you for no charge, no obligation. All right. Well, I hope that was of benefit to you. It's just one topic that's very important. I wanted to cover it. I wanted to let you know a lot of factors. I want to let you know a lot of stuff. We're going to do more videos. We're going to build a library. Come back here often to see a lot more tips on how to plan for your own retirement. And until next time, thanks for watching Straight Talk Wealth Radio, and tell your friends and come on back. We'll get more for you.